Bush's toxic legacy in Iraq. ISIS, the brutal insurgent terrorist group formerly known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq, has seized much of western and northern Iraq and even threatens towns not far from Baghdad. From where did ISIS spring? One of George W. Bush's most toxic legacies is the introduction of Al-Qaeda into Iraq, which is the ISIS mothership. If this wasn't so tragic, it would be supremely ironic, because before the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, top Bush officials were insisting that there was an Al-Qaeda Iraq axis of evil. Their claims that Saddam Hussein's men were training members of Al-Qaeda how to make weapons of mass destruction seem to be one of the most compelling rationales for the impending war. After the fall of Hussein's regime, no documents were unearthed in Iraq proving the Hussein-Al-Qaeda axis, despite the fact that, like other totalitarian regimes, Hussein's government kept massive and meticulous records. The U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency had by 2006 translated 34 million pages of documents from Hussein's Iraq, and found there was nothing to substantiate a partnership between Hussein and Al-Qaeda. 2 years later, the Pentagon's own internal think tank, the Institute for Defense Analyses, concluded after examining 600,000 Hussein-era documents and several thousand hours of his regime's audio and videotapes, that there was no smoking gun, i.e. direct connection between Hussein's Iraq and Al-Qaeda. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence concluded in 2008, as every other investigation had before, that there was no cooperative relationship between Hussein and Al-Qaeda. The committee also found that most of the contacts cited between Iraq and Al-Qaeda, before the war by the intelligence community and policy makers have been determined not to have occurred. Instead of interrupting a budding relationship between Hussein and Al-Qaeda, the Iraq War precipitated the arrival of Al-Qaeda into Iraq. Although the Bush administration tended to gloss over the fact, Al-Qaeda only formally established itself in Iraq a year and a half after the U.S. invasion. On October 17, 2004, its brutal leader Abu Musab al-Zarqawi issued an online statement pledging allegiance to Osama bin Laden. Zarqawi's pledge was fulsome: "By God, O Sheikh of the Mujahideen, if you bid us plunge into the ocean, we would follow you. If you ordered it so, we would obey." Zarqawi's special demonic genius was to launch Iraq down the road to civil war. In early 2004, the U.S. military intercepted a letter from Zarqawi to bin Laden, in which he proposed provoking a civil war between Sunnis and Shia. Zarqawi's strategy was to hit the Shia so they would in turn strike the Sunnis, so precipitating a vicious circle of violence, in which Al-Qaeda would be cast as the protector of the Sunnis against the wrath of the Shia. It was a strategy that worked all too well, provoking first sectarian conflict in Iraq and later civil war. Al-Qaeda in Iraq, where AQI regularly attacked Shia religious processions, shrines and clerics. The tipping point in the slide toward full-blown civil war was Al-Qaeda's February 2006 attack on the Golden Mosque in Samarra, which is arguably the most important Shia shrine in the world. 3 years into the Iraq War, AQI seemed all but unstoppable. A classified Marine intelligence assessment dated August 17, 2006, found that AQI had become the de facto government of the western Iraqi province of Anbar, which is strategically important because it borders Jordan, Syria and Saudi Arabia and makes up about a third of the landmass of Iraq. In addition, AQI controlled a good chunk of the urban belts around Baghdad, the Triangle of Death to the south of the capital and many of the towns north of it, up the Tigris River to the Syrian border. Thus AQI controlled territory larger than New England, and maintained an iron grip on much of the Sunni population. In other words, the Bush administration had presided over the rise of precisely what it had said was one of the key goals of the Iraq War: to destroy a safe haven for Al-Qaeda in the heart of the Arab world.